Hey guys, Alex with Art Cyclery here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Cascade Components Nomad LT link. Now Cascade Components is a small company out of Everett, Washington, doing some custom suspension linkage for your Santa Cruz bike. Now this guy is going to go on my Gen 4 Nomad, and what this lower link does is add 6 millimeters of chainstay length, makes the rear end a little bit more progressive so it resists bottom out, and also with the stock shock configuration, it gives you 7 millimeters more of travel. Now you can bump that up to a whopping 190 to make this a true mini DH bike, but you're gonna have to get a different shock, and that's gonna be achieved with a 230 by 65 mil stroke. So before we install this, it's worth noting that when you install this link, you no longer have the two settings with the flip chip that comes stock with Santa Cruz. Now, to the best of our understanding, this simulates the low setting on the stock flip chip setup, so you don't need the flip chip hardware anymore, but you can use your stock hardware, which is really convenient. Additionally, you have Enduro sealed bearings throughout the entire thing. So for the installation, you're gonna need some basic assembly compound, a 6 millimeter Allen wrench, and a torque wrench. Now, starting off, we're gonna weigh this guy, and that comes in at 296 grams. Now, to finish off the installation, to make it as easy and pleasurable as possible, you gotta make it fun for yourself. So I'm gonna enjoy a nice little kombucha here, but for some people, they might need a little heavier duty stuff. So to start off, we're gonna have to remove the rear wheel. Just set all this stuff aside. Now this next step is optional, but I find it a little bit easier if you remove your bottle cage, just because it gets in the way of removing the shock. Now it can be done without removing it, but you gotta do a little bit of a shock yoga to get it out of the way. Cool, so now that we have that out of the way, you can actually remove the shock now using a 6 millimeter Allen. And as you remove your shock, be careful not to lose any of the shock mounting hardware around the eyelets, as those things are prone to falling off quite easily. Now with the rear shock mount here, on a lot of the Nomads, it is a bearing mount. So there are two washers that cover the bearing. Be sure not to lose those or have them fall down into the linkage. But if they do, we're taking it off anyway, so it won't be too bad. So now that we have the shock off, we're gonna remove the lower link. Now, Santa Cruz uses an expanding collet axle system, and you're gonna need to start by removing the 5 mil bolt that is used to attach the two mounting points of the link to the frame. So now you're gonna take your 8 millimeter Allen wrench and remove the pivot axles. And be sure to keep track of which is the lower and higher one, because they are different lengths and you don't want to mix those up. All right, and now you want to carefully remove your stock link. And there we have it. You're going to want to remove the bearing covers that are stock on this, and we're gonna use them on the Cascade Components link. So now that we have everything off the bike, we're gonna go and reinstall the new link. So what we're gonna need to do is grease everything that is gonna be coming into contact with washers, spacers, axles, any kind of threads, all that type of stuff. And just a thin light coating is fine for most of this stuff. We're just trying to keep moisture and grit out. All right, so we're gonna throw our bearing covers back on. That is something we reuse from the stock link, even though the bearings are different between the stock and upgraded one. Now this can be a little tricky, but what's nice is the grease should hold your bearing covers in place as you position it back into the frame. And then we're just gonna lightly tighten everything. but not fully torque it. Now we're gonna install the rear bearing covers. And this is the important one to get right. And now this is gonna be a lower drive side bearing cover, but it also acts as a little bit of a chainstay protector. All right, now that we got those two axles snug, and we're gonna wanna tighten all our fasteners to manufacturer spec. And now we can reinstall the expanding part of the pivot axle, which will lock everything in place and prevent it from backing out. All right, now we're gonna reinstall the shock itself. Now, if your shock has the bearing mount, you can continue to use that. It doesn't affect, or it doesn't get changed at all by using the new link. Same deal, we're gonna grease the bearings just lightly. Make sure to reinstall your bearing covers if you do have the bearing mount. Now this can get a little tricky because those bearing covers tend to wanna fall off. And honestly, the easiest way to do this would probably be to remove the little dirt fender. Once you have everything situated, you're gonna wanna grab your shock mount bolt. We're just gonna hand tighten this. Everything's still rotating and moving smoothly, which is a good sign. Now we're gonna finish it off with our upper shock mount bolts. So now to finish up, we're just gonna make sure that all of our shock bolts are fully tightened. Jesus, who let you back in here? I thought we locked the doors.
Is that even torqued to spec?
Yeah, we know what we're doing. It's torqued. And to finish it off, we're just gonna reinstall our rear wheel.
40 on a trail bike? Someone's obviously overcompensating.
Oh my God, what are you still doing here? I thought we kicked you out. And we're done. So we just finished up the installation of the link. It all went pretty smoothly, so this shouldn't be too difficult for most home mechanics to do with basic hand tools. Now, as you can see, I have the 40 mounted to the front of my Nomad. So far, I've been riding it like this for about 3 months, and I really like the way the 40 feels on the front of the bike. Obviously, it affects it in some ways that don't help with climbing, but I think that having the Nomad LT link from Cascade is really gonna help balance out this bike and kind of give it that mini DH feel that I'm looking for. So I'm excited to see how this thing handles on some steep stuff. Stay tuned, we're gonna have a more in-depth review coming after I ride this for a little bit. So be sure to subscribe to our channel, like this video, so you can see the next one.